Hey everyone, it's Oscar here, bringing you another great episode of Life After Deportation, the podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the topic of life after deportation. So grab your headphones, turn it up, let's unwind together, and welcome to another episode of Life After Deportation. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Life After Deportation, and welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Life is Life Hard After Deportation, guys. So check it out, guys. Without further ado, guys, let's go and take it back to part 2 and pick up where we left off. As you already know, I'm a deportee, being deported for over 10 years, trying to make things right in this second opportunity that God has blessed me with. So it's nothing right but to pay it forward and tell you guys, from my experience, what I've been through, the struggles, what I've noticed, and relate the experience over to you guys for those that are freshly gonna be deported, are barely new being deported, or already been deported. You know what I mean? We can share our stories, share our struggles, and share the beautiful second chance that our God has provided to us. You know what I mean? Because look, guys, like, I'm gonna go a little off subject, guys, but being deported to me in my life, guys, is a second chance. It's a second opportunity. Because the way I was going in the States, guys, believe it or not, man, I would not be here right now if it wasn't for me being deported. So believe it or not, guys, deportation actually saved me. And I know a lot of you guys out there, guys, you could say the same thing too. Deportation did save you guys. You know what I mean? How do I know this? Because I know myself, you know what I mean? And I speak from the heart and I speak from experience. I know I wasn't going the right direction in the States. You know what I mean? I'm not saying a lot of people gonna say, well, that's probably why you got deported, because you weren't doing good. Nah, man, I was a good person. I was just doing bad things. You know what I mean? But anyways, guys, check it out, guys. The struggles of being deported comes from day one. You know what I mean? Why? Because you don't know where you're going. You don't know where you're gonna go, whether you're gonna go left or you're gonna go right. All you know is that you have to make it, because at the end of the day, you know, you're hungry. You have to make it. You have to be hungry for life, you know. So getting a job, guys, is not easy. Yeah, you may have 5-10 years experience or whatever you were doing in the States, you know what I mean? But coming here in Mexico is a whole different market. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you know, a trade, you know, or a professional, you know, or day labor, it's a whole different market. It's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different environment. It's a whole different atmosphere. You know what I mean? So you have to acclimate yourself, you know? So getting a job is one thing, you know, but it's easier said than done. You know, a lot of people, when you go door to door trying to get employment, you know what I mean? You may get looked down at because why? Because the way you look, the way you speak, they know you're not from here. And then when you say, hey, man, I'm looking for a job, I've been deported, boom. You know what I mean? That's a taboo, you know? A lot of people look us as deported people because we're bad hombres. We're doing something bad in the States, and there's a reason why we got deported. But that's not the point. You know what I mean? Everybody's entitled to a second chance in life. And it doesn't matter who you were, what you did, or what happened in your past. Everybody's entitled to a second chance. You know what I mean? And that's what I like to break the stigma, like to break the stereotype that, you know, this new wave of generation, like I was telling you in the other episodes, this new wave of generation, it's gonna shake Mexico. It's gonna shake a lot of ground. Why? Because a lot of bright minds, a lot of bright souls are coming to Mexico now. A lot of Gen Z are tired of the way they're being treated in the States, or how their parents weren't treated. Now they're moving into Mexico and making Mexico great again. You know what I mean? But anyways, guys, getting a job, guys, like I said, it's easier said than done. I remember myself going from door to door asking for a job. And here in Mexico, guys, when you go from door to door looking for a job, you had to bring your own application. You know what I mean? Your own paper application, a resume too, you know, whatnot. But that's the way it is, you know. Like I said, Mexico is a very advanced country, but it does have a lot of third world traditions, if you will. Like, come on now, the application, you know, come on now, you know what I mean. You don't need to bring, you don't, every employer should have some type of application to give to the applicant, you know what I mean. But then again, that's my own personal opinion. Maybe because I was spoiled in the States, the employer had the application all the time, and then when you come to Mexico, you're no longer spoiled. Believe it or not, you'll notice that living in the United States, you are well spoiled, especially when you come into Mexico and you live the daily struggles as a real Mexican. You know what I mean? So, like I was saying, guys, too much information. I deviate from the subject so much, guys. But then again, this is so much great information that, that our God has given me to give you guys. You know what I mean? I've been dealing with a lot of struggles. I've been through ups and downs. I've been through the ups. I've been through the downs. You name it. You know what I mean? So, like I was saying, guys, going from door to door, guys, it's tough. Like I was saying, you present yourself as a good moral person, and you're being out there trying to get an honest job, and for the employers to stereotype you because, one, you're deported, two, you speak weird Spanish, three, you probably have tattoos, four, you probably dress differently. You know what I mean? Those things are noticeable, believe it or not. But one of the best things that helped me get a job and get, a stronghold, a good foundation, getting the feel of work, how Mexico works, is going through a call center. Why? Because they were quick to hire me. You know what I mean? Why? Because I speak English. You know what I mean? So that's what they're looking for. And that's where I oriented myself instead of, back in the States, I had different traits. I was a mobile mechanic, I was a manager, auto parts store, tow truck driver, stuff like that, we had different, traits, oil field, construction, but I couldn't apply those traits in Mexico. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I would be able to find those traits and, apply myself, which I did. I tried going for welding, but unfortunately, compared to the money that a call center was making compared to a welder, it wasn't that much. In order for me to make more money, then I would have to venture out and create my own business and gather my own market, my own clients, and that's a lot of people do. A lot of deportees come with, a lot of great skills: carpentry, construction, gardening, welding, and they bring it over here to Mexico and they find themselves that the market is not the same. Some fail and some succeed, but like with anything, it's 50-50. You don't know if you're gonna hit. You don't know if you're gonna triumph if you don't try. You know what I mean? You are not gonna fail if you don't try. You know what I mean? So what worked for me, guys, may not work for you. But what did work for me, I would like to explain to you guys and share you guys my experience. So working at a call center, because the work was in English, but the training was in Spanish. Sometimes it was bilingual. But at the end of the day, everybody spoke English. You know what I mean? So that's what made it easy for me to adapt to living in Mexico. You know what I mean? Now, one thing that made it easy for me is that the call center, since it's a big company, they automatically give you payroll. They do the whole bank account for you, and they, you get paid. As opposed to the States, it was kind of hard, getting paid on the table, cashing a check, having to go to the corner store, to the liquor store, getting 20% off that top of the check, you know what I mean, for cashing them under the table, you know what I mean? As opposed here, you get your full paycheck, you know what I mean? And you get it through like a debit card through the bank, So that's one of the great things that helped me out. Is in the States, I didn't have a bank account, you know what I mean? Any of you guys don't have a bank account because you don't have a social security number or a state ID, you know what I mean? So that's one of the positive things that I liked, that I actually enjoy. I was like, man, I finally have a bank account under my name. I finally have a direct deposit that's, going into my bank account for my labor that I'm doing. You know what I mean? So that's one of the positive things that, comes with getting a job with a big company, or, a company that is legit, because a lot of people will still pay you under the table. You know what I mean? And ain't nothing wrong with that. But, if you want to advance in this world, you might want to consider opening up a few bank accounts or whatnot. You never know when God's going to bless you with all that rain, all those blessings. So anyways, guys, Finding a job, it is a struggle. It's not sugar coated. Not only you're gonna have to find a job, but you have to find a job that you actually can enjoy doing. You know what I mean? You can't just go to a call center because I'm telling you, oh, it works good and it pays you. You know what I mean? No, the call center is not for everybody. I've recommended so many people into a call center and they just walked out the same day. Why? Because it's not for them. They'd rather be out in the fields. They'd rather be out there in the outdoors, and that's fine. Whatever floats your boat. But at the end of the day, I'm showing you what worked out for me, you know. And like I say, guys, starting from scratch is not easy, but it is rewarding starting from zero. It is, because like I said, first you get your job, then you get your weekly paychecks, bi-weekly, whatever it is. But hey, you working, you building that structure, finding a job and then finding your own place. It's not always in that order. Of course not. It's not always in that order, but hypothetically speaking, you get your income. Now you can pay your deposit, you can pay your rent, but that's just one side of the problem. What if you have family in the States that are, you're still looking for your paychecks? Why? Because you're the breadwinner. What do you do then? Now you have to juggle between, yourself, taking care of yourself here in Mexico, and then having to take care of your family in the States, however, by all means necessary. You know what I mean? Whether it be conversating with your kids, conversating with your spouse, and see how what you can do from this side of the border. You know what I mean? To control your household on the other side. And how is it that you can provide for that family as well? Those are the things that go through a person's mind while you're deported. Is my family gonna be okay? Is my kids gonna be okay? My kids gonna have back to school clothes, when they go back to school in the States. Not every family, unfortunately, stays in Mexico. I'm very, very fortunate, and I thank God every single day that my family lives here in Mexico with me. You know what I mean? I have a very strong-minded wife that decided to, make it full time and live here in Mexico with me and my whole family. But it wasn't always like that. We had to do that whole traveling thing. 1 week yes, 2 weeks no. Once a month type of thing, and the money was there. If it wasn't, you know what I mean. You gotta think about those things too. I remember back in the day. I had to get a job. I was looking for a different income because I needed to get an extra income to sustain my wife and my kids coming back and forth, you know what I mean, and paying the rent across. And one thing that helped me out a lot here, guys, is selling food. At a call center, everybody's hungry. Everybody wants food. So what's one thing that I was thinking, so what's one thing that can sell quick, and I tried it all. I tried biscuits and gravy, I tried breakfast stuff, pancakes, but then I figured it's like everybody was selling burritos for like 20 pesos, 15 pesos. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try that too, and that's what I started doing. I started selling burritos, you know what I mean, at the call center. And that money will help me out with my transportation, my lunch, my food later on. That way, with my weekly paychecks, I wouldn't have to touch them as much, So one has to look for different struggles, different means, different hustles to make extra income, because the call center or your job, in Mexico, is not going to pay you as much as what you were earning in the States. I'm not saying it's not impossible. I'm pretty sure there's other employers out there that do pay as close as you in the States, if not maybe more, you know what I mean, while you're working in Mexico. Absolutely, anything's possible, But the reality is that an employer here in Mexico is going to pay you way less than what you were earning in the States, So that's one of the things that helped me out a lot, is trying to get a different side hustle. You know what I mean? I started hustling, selling burritos, hamburgers, hot dogs, repairing cell phones, you know what I mean? Stuff like that, and that's what one thing one has to do, is try to find different means to survive and to get on top. You know what I mean? And one of the main struggles, guys, like I say, is getting to adapt, to every single day life, guys. From the day you go to work, like I say, guys, when we get deported, we're alone, and you have to adapt to waking up by yourself, going to work by yourself, coming home to yourself, you know what I mean? As opposed to living in the States when, you had a routine, you will go home to your kids, pick up your kids from school, go back to your home with your spouse, go back to work and so forth, you know what I mean? Now, because you're alone, it gets depressing. It does. You know what I mean? You come, say you have a roommate or you have, an apartment that you're renting or a house, whatever your residence at, you go home to empty walls because your other side of the family is in the other side. You know what I mean? Your other half is in the other side. And this is why it hits hard because me as a father and as a husband, I cannot imagine myself without my kids or without my wife. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying we take them for granted. We don't take them for granted, but I can just imagine those parents to this day, mothers and fathers that have left their children in the States with their significant other, a family member, because they know their life for the kids will be better over there, or whatever the case may be, is that they can't bring them to the States, or they're separated and they can no longer see their children. You know what I mean? We do have cases like that. And believe it or not, deportation doesn't break families. That single father that used to be able to see his child, through weekly schedules or, bi-weekly, now can no longer see their child because the mother's probably not willing to participate. The father, is not willing to participate and bring him to Mexico and have some visitation, and then becomes a phone call, you know what I mean? And then that routine gets lost, you know what I mean? So it's not the same. That's a struggle in its own, is being broken from that side of the family, you know what I mean? From being broken, being departed, and then losing that connection. That's the worst thing that can happen to somebody because, if you were in the States, that would have never happened. You probably would have pushed, to see your child, to see that visitation, you know what I mean? Because, at the end of the day, you have rights. But what do you do now when that significant other doesn't want to cooperate and bring your children in? You know what I mean? Now, that's the struggle that I feel in my heart because, I know personal, I know people, I know, immediate family members that have not seen their kids for over a decade, and every single day, guys, I pray for all the parents to have some type of reconciliation, some type of, momentum, some type of closure to be with their children. You know what I mean? That's one of the other struggles, guys, that, we face as a deported man. As a deported father, I can feel the pain in different, fathers that whenever they tell me, man, I haven't seen my kid, man, my baby mama is not trying to put my son on the phone, those are heartbreaking words, you know what I mean? And what do you tell a father? What do you tell a mother that can't see their kids? What do you do? You know what I mean? When you're helpless, So that's one of the struggle, guys, besides getting a job, is trying to live your life as normal as possible, trying to bring your family together, bring your family to Mexico, living with you, and just try to normalize life. You know what I mean? Just like everybody else does. So at the end of the day, guys, the struggle is there. Being deported is not sugar-coated, but being deported is not impossible. And being deported does have a second chance, and it does have its best moments and the best triumphs, guys, because like I say, guys, nothing in this world is impossible. You know what I mean? Nothing in this world is impossible, and you could live a very well suitable, happy life in Mexico while being deported. You know what I mean? It's not easy, guys. It's not easy being deported because we are also faced with a challenge of every single day. You know what I mean? You may say, what challenge? Well, the challenge is that, you may have your family across and you may not have your family living here. You still be adapting to living in Mexico because you were in the States for how many decades? You know what I mean? So being deported over 10 years, 5 years, even a year, is not always easy. You know what I mean? Deportation does have, and even though I've been deported for over 10 years, I still don't feel like I'm from here. You know what I mean? I still feel like an outsider. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, man, why do you feel like an outsider? If you've been here for 10 years. And it's like, because you're from here, but you're not from here. You know what I mean? It's like you're like a lot of people say, you're too Mexican to be American, and you're too American to be Mexican. You know what I mean? So you're stuck in between, and that's one of the other struggles that one as a deported person has to deal with. But like I say, guys, thank you guys for listening to part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we're going to continue talking about more struggles and more triumphs in this podcast. All right, guys. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to know that life goes on. There is hope after life of deportation. There is life after deportation, and there is hope during deportation, guys. There's nothing unstoppable that you cannot do. You can live a well-living, decent life in Mexico, and you can also live the Mexican dream in Mexico, guys. All right. So don't look at it as a burden. Look at it as a second opportunity. Like I said, guys, deportation is a second opportunity, guys. So without further ado, guys, I hope you guys like this episode and join me in the next episode of part 3. Don't forget to like, hit the subscribe button, share it, and let's go. One God, let's go. If you'd like more information on how to contribute or would like to share your deportation story, please reach out via email to deportedtj@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to our other platforms like YouTube so we can continue encouraging that there is life after deportation. Oh, in Jesus' name, let's go.